ensure po the quality water for communities catering to tourists? What would be your response po, given that these kinds of policies are affecting tourism?
The provision of clean water to our tourists is, of course, a basic human right. And therefore, the Department of Tourism is of the position that this must be readily available across our destinations. It is not our chief mandate to ensure the provision of clean water, and we have worked very closely with the DENR in order to ensure that our work with the local government units that have primary jurisdiction over these tourist destinations is one that would yield a safe and ideal destination as far as the availability of water is concerned. On the other hand, the Department of Tourism's attached agency, the Tourism Infrastructure Enterprise Zone Authority, does provide infrastructure assistance to island destinations in need of intervention such as wastewater treatment, septage treatment, and the provision of quality water. So we would be happy to receive any request from the local government unit to address this situation, even as we recognize that this is a private entity that is running the water system in that particular LGU. So I would yield the more specific answer to that question to the holder of the water concessionaire, Madam Chair.
If I make a short follow-up, Madam Chair, may we ask if the Department of Tourism would be open to a dialogue with these affected stakeholders which provide important tourist services, but are finding it difficult to find ways by which paano nila ma-deliver tong services na to kung wala naman po silang maibigay na tubig.
Yes, absolutely, Madam Chair. Our regional office has been coordinating with the local stakeholders to receive these concerns and, of course, to do as much as we can in order to provide assistance where it's needed.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Representative Reneco. I now recognize from the majority, Deputy Majority Leader Bong Teves.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Department of Tourism family, headed by Secretary Cristina Garcia Prasco, officials, especially my good friend, Undersecretary Kokoy Jumapaw, attached agencies, good morning to all of us. Madam Chair, I would like to manifest my full support to the proposed budget of the Department of Tourism. I would like to congratulate the DOT family. Ang Pilipinas po ay ang biggest domestic tourism market in Southeast Asia with a forecast of $70.8 billion for 2025. But I would like to appeal, Madam Chair, na kung pwede tasan po naman ninyo ang allocation budget for Bicol Region. Kasama ko po rito ngayon si Deputy Majority Leader Vice Chairman Direk Escudero na napakababa po ang budget ng Bicol. 38.1 million. Kailangan po natin itong dagdagan kung kinakailangan. Ang Bicol Region po ay isa rin sa potential. Dahil alam naman po natin madaming mga turista ang pupunta rito. Isa pa po, Madam Chair, gusto ko lang pong pasalamatan ang CHESA Chief Operating Officer, my boss Mark Lapid, for providing a tourist rest area sa aming bayan sa Baras Catanduanes. Sana madagdagan din po ito ng boardwalk dahil alam po ninyo, ang Baras Catanduanes po ay kilala bilang isang surfing destination o tourism capital sa province of Catanduanes. Lastly, I would like to reiterate my full support to the proposed budget of Department of Tourism, and if possible, tasan po natin ito. And I also encourage my fellow congressman to support the same. Maraming salamat sa inyo lahat.
Galing talaga, Bong. Galing.
Thank you very much, Representative Bong Teves, for your manifestation. The chair now recognize from the minority, Representative Deputy Minority Leader Percy Sandanya.
Maraming salamat po, Madam Chair. Marami pong salamat sa presentation ng Department of Tourism Family. Magandang umaga po sa atin. For my first set of questions, Madam Chair, I'd like to focus on issues surrounding international arrivals. Earlier in the presentation, highlight po natin yung domestic market, pero alam naman po natin na kadalasan ang lion's share dapat talaga ng income natin sa tourism should also come from international arrivals. In 2024 po, the DOT promised that 7.7 million international arrivals, no? And then the actual number was 5.95 million, a shortfall of 1.8 million or almost 25% below target. And I'd like to juxtapose this with pre-pandemic arrivals in 2019, which reached almost 8.3 million. 5 years na po since noong pandemya, pero we are still far behind. So the question is, isn't this a clear proof that the DOT strategies have failed to bring in the tourism back to pre-pandemic levels? And perhaps this will be also a good reference for the members of this committee for the DOT to be more candid about what were the mistakes in the planning and execution which caused this gap of nearly 2 million tourists target as opposed to actual arrivals?
Thank you for the question. Madam Chair, I will answer that question in 3 ways. First is by addressing the main reason why the Philippines was unable to meet its 7.7 million target, which was projected based on the liberalization of visas specifically for the market of China. At the beginning of the administration, the Department of Tourism had proposed that visas be liberalized for the Chinese market, considering that nearly the rest of our neighbors had already lifted visa requirements for Chinese nationals. Therefore, the electronic visa program was launched by the Department of Foreign Affairs, and it had projected that they would be able to issue 2 million visas within the span of 1 year at around 8,000 visas per day. That 2 million number was not reached because the e-visa program was promptly suspended and regular visa applications was also meted with stricter and more stringent documentary requirements. Had we been able to continue the e-visa program, then we would have been able to bring in the 2 million. And if you add 5.9 plus 2 million, that is in excess of the projected 7.7 million in arrivals. Secondly, the question as far as international arrivals comparison is concerned must also be tempered with reality. The reality being that the Philippines is an archipelagic nation whose dependency on international arrivals is solely pegged on air travel, at a 99% dependency on international flights coming into the country. In stark contrast to that is the fact that our direct competitors in the ASEAN enjoy international land borders, such as Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, and the like. As a matter of fact, An analysis of the share of ASEAN visitors relative to total arrivals shows significant contrasts among Southeast Asian countries. For Thailand, while they show the strongest arrivals across the ASEAN, it's indicated that their international land-based arrivals constitute around 25% of its visitors. For Malaysia, their dependency on international land border travel, as far as international tourists concerned, is around 43.4%. For Cambodia, their dependency on international land border travel for international tourists is around 63%. In stark contrast to the Philippines' arrivals, where only 8.1% come from ASEAN nations. This goes to show that the markets that are being penetrated and attracted by the Philippines are definitely not within the ASEAN region, and therefore we do not enjoy the same geographic advantages of our direct competitors who have the convenience of receiving international tourists not by riding an international flight, but by simply crossing a land border. Third, in order to fully rationalize the performance of Philippine tourism on international arrivals, we must also provide an analysis of the investments made in the industry for it to be truly globally competitive. A comparison of the budgets of our counterpart departments of tourism amongst our direct neighbors would show that the Philippines' ranking in the ASEAN almost equates our ranking in terms of budgets. Simply put, the lesser you invest in tourism, the lesser international arrivals you will have. And finally, we wish to emphasize and we plead for this House's understanding that while we have devoted blood, sweat, and tears to the success of this industry, we simply cannot perform as well as we would like if we are given such meager resources as we have. That being said, notwithstanding the lower international arrivals of the country, our performance as far as GDP contribution with our ASEAN neighbors would show that the GDP contribution of the Philippines in tourism is the highest in Southeast Asia. Tourism spending per capita among our Southeast Asian neighbors places the Philippines first at no less than $2,073. And tourism employment for the country, which is also an important measure of tourism performance, has already exceeded pre-pandemic numbers.
Daghang salamat, Madam Secretary, Madam Chair. Speaking of resources and investment, let me now shift to issues on how the department is utilizing its budget. Looking at the 2024 figures, only 314 million or 10.5% of the DOT's budget went to capital outlay, while 1.95 billion or 65.3% went to MOOE. In 2025, the imbalance worsened, 235 million for capital outlay, while MOOE climbed to 1.79 billion, which is around 69.5%. This represents a 52.9% cut in capital investments in just 1 year. The question, Madam Chair, is why is the DOT prioritizing its own operation instead of building infrastructure and tourism facilities? And related to that, isn't this proof that the DOT budget now sustains bureaucracy rather than create lasting tourism assets? As mentioned before, the importance of investment. So how can the department justify its current proposal when tangible investments in destinations keep shrinking year after year?
we wish to clarify, Madam Chair, that the Department of Tourism's budget allocation